All right, let's jump right into it. Today, we are taking a deep dive into one of the absolute giants of the ancient world, the Egyptian city of Memphis.
Not the one with the blues, definitely the original, known as Men-Nefer or Inabu Hedge back in the day.
Exactly. And its location was key, wasn't it? Right there at the mouth of the Nile Delta, super strategic.
Absolutely critical. That position really defined its power for millennia.
Mhm.
And you can still see the ruins today near Mitrahina. It's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Yeah, fascinating place. So our mission today is to unpack this foundational city. We'll use our sources to figure out what made it tick, how it rose, and, how it eventually faded but left this huge mark.
Sounds good. Where should we start? The founding.
Let's do it. The very beginning.
Okay, so tradition, and this is backed up by historians like Manetho from the Ptolemaic era, tells us Memphis was founded by King Menes.
The King Menes, the one credited with unifying Upper and Lower Egypt.
That's the one. Around 3100 BCE, a massive moment in Egyptian history.
And the founding story itself is just, well, it's incredible. The legend says he didn't just find a good spot, he actually diverted the Nile.
Yeah, changed its whole course just to create stable ground for his new capital.
Imagine the sheer scale of that right at the dawn of the state.
Exactly. And it wasn't just showing off. It gave him the secure base, perfectly positioned between the two lands he'd just brought together. So Memphis immediately becomes the political, the administrative heart.
Right, the nerve center.
And it stayed that way. It was the capital through the whole early dynastic period. That's roughly 3100 to 2686 BCE, and then all through the Old Kingdom as well.
The Old Kingdom. So we're talking like 2686 to 2181 BCE, centuries at the very top.
Centuries. But it wasn't just about politics and paperwork. Memphis had this deep spiritual side, too.
Yes, good point. Beyond the admin, it was a huge religious hub. The main god there was Ptah, right?
Ptah, yes. The creator god, also the patron god of craftsmen. Which makes sense given Memphis became famous for its artisans and building projects.
And his main temple, the Hut Ptah, the enclosure of the Ka of Ptah, that was one of the biggest religious centers in Egypt.
One of the very grandest. And here's a fascinating detail from the sources, the name the Greeks used for the whole country, Aegyptos.
Yeah.
It seems to have come from that temple's name. Hut-Katah became Aegyptos, which eventually became Egypt.
Wow. So the name for the entire civilization came from a single temple complex in Memphis.
It really shows you how prominent the city was, even to outsiders. And inside that complex, they worshipped the Memphite triad Ptah, his consort Sekhmet.
The lioness goddess.
Fierce.
Very. And their son, Nefertem, the whole place was massive sanctuaries, sacred avenues, sphinxes lining the ways.
So real grandeur reflecting its status. Okay, but cities need more than gods and governors. What about the economy? Was it a powerhouse there too?
Oh, absolutely. Think ancient mega commerce center. The sources talk about just dense networks of workshops, factories, warehouses, bustling.
Find the location again right by the delta. It must have had a major port. It did. Peru Nefer, one of Egypt's busiest apparently, handling trade up and down the Nile and internationally too.
What kind of stuff are we talking?
Everything. Grain, textiles, the essentials. But also luxury items, gold, incense, exotic woods, all pouring through Memphis.
And all that trade must have fueled a vibrant culture. Lots of skilled workers.
Definitely. Craftsmen and artisans thrived there, especially with royal patronage. They produced incredible art, jewelry, religious statues. So much of the stuff you see in museums now likely came out of Memphite workshops.
Okay, so it starts strong, becomes this religious and economic hub. How did its role change over the really long haul of Egyptian history?
Well, it had its peaks and, well, not troughs exactly, but periods of adaptation. The absolute peak was the Old Kingdom, 4th to 6th, the dynasties especially.
That's when the royal court was based there.
Exactly, the undisputed center. And critically, this is when the Great Pyramids at Giza were built. They're part of Memphis's huge necropolis, symbols of its power then.
All right, the pyramids aren't separate. They're tied to Memphis's golden age. So what happened after the Old Kingdom?
Well, in the Middle Kingdom, around 2055 to 1650 BCE, the main capital actually shifted south to Thebes.
Ah, so Memphis lost its top spot.
Politically, yes. But, and this is important, it didn't just fade. It remained a vital administrative center, a commercial hub. The temples, especially Ptah's, still got royal funding. The high priests of Ptah were still big shots.
So still influential, just not the capital.
Right. But then it had a comeback. In the New Kingdom, say 1550 to 1070 BCE, it regained a lot of prominence.
How so?
Pharaohs started setting up royal palaces there again, military headquarters too. Big names like Thutmose III, Amenhotep II, Ramesses II, they invested heavily, built new temples, huge statues. A lot of the famous ruins we see today date from this period.
Ramesses the Great, yeah. He left his mark everywhere.
He certainly did in Memphis.
Yeah.
It even became a major center for educating the elite, the sons of nobles getting trained for government service.
Yeah.
Interesting. But empires rise and fall, cities too.
Yeah.
Did it face challenges later on? Foreign rule?
Definitely. It was a key defensive point during invasions by the Assyrians and later the Persians, especially under the 25th and 26th dynasties.
But it eventually fell.
It was captured by the Persians, yes. But even then, sources say it kept its religious importance. The worship of Ptah and the sacred Apis bull, which was linked to him, continued strong.
So spiritually resilient.
Yeah.
But then came Alexander the Great.
332 BCE. And that was the game changer. Not just conquest, but Alexander founded a new capital.
Alexandria, on the coast.
Exactly. Brilliant for his empire looking out towards the Mediterranean, but for inland Memphis, that marked the beginning of the end of its political dominance.
Power shifted to the coast.
Pretty much. Memphis stayed important for some ceremonies, like coronations for some Ptolemaic rulers, but Alexandria just grew and grew, becoming the main city. Under the Romans, Memphis's decline continued.
And by the Arab conquest in 641 CE?
Largely in ruins. Chroniclers like Abdul-Latif described this vast, ruined landscape. Tragically, it became a source of building materials.
A quarry for new cities. Like Fustat.
Yes, the precursor to Cairo. Its stones literally helped build its successor.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
speaking of scale and ruins, we have to talk about the necropolis. It wasn't just the city itself.
No, the City of the Dead was just as important, maybe even more famous today, stretching out along the desert edge.
And it includes some of the most iconic sites anywhere. Like Saqqara.
Right, just nearby. Home of the Step Pyramid of Djoser, designed by Imhotep, the first massive stone building, a total game changer in architecture born from Memphis's power.
An architectural revolution.
Yeah.
And then, further north, Giza.
Giza, the Great Pyramids, the Sphinx, the ultimate symbols of Old Kingdom power built for the pharaohs ruling from...
From Memphis.
Exactly. It all connects back. And the necropolis is even bigger, includes sites like Abusir, Dashur, more pyramids, tombs for nobles.
The sheer scale tells you how central this place was for Egyptian beliefs about life, death, and the afterlife for, what, over 1,000 years?
Easily, which makes you wonder, how did we piece all this together if the city itself mostly crumbled?
Good question. The rediscovery process.
Really kicked off in the 19th century. Explorers, early archaeologists, people like Caviglia, Mariette, Flinders Petrie started digging.
And what did they find amidst the ruins?
Some incredible things. Colossal statues, particularly of Ramesses II. Those are really impressive. The beautiful alabaster sphinx, remnants of temples to Ptah, Hathor, Amun.
So tangible links to its grand past. And today, it's an
Yeah.
open-air museum, right?
It is. Mostly foundations, scattered blocks, but some spectacular pieces are still right there on site.
Like that huge Ramesses statue you mentioned, lying on
Right,
its back.
the one. The Colossus of Ramses II, nearly 10 meters long, limestone.
Yeah.
And the alabaster sphinx, which is one of the biggest sphinxes carved from a single block. Really striking.
Plus other statues, reliefs, bits of inscriptions.
Enough to give you a sense of the scale, even now. And as you said earlier, the whole area Memphis city site, plus the necropolis, Giza, Saqqara, it's all recognized as one UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Acknowledging that connection between the living city and its city of the dead.
And there's one more piece of the puzzle, something really crucial that came out of Memphis, well, linked to it.
Oh, what's that?
The Decree of Memphis, issued by Ptolemy V way back in 996 BC. It was inscribed, like other official decrees then, in 3 scripts.
3 scripts. Hieroglyphs?
Hieroglyphs, Demotic is another Egyptian script, and Ancient Greek.
Hang on. Hieroglyphs, Demotic Greek. That sounds exactly like the Rosetta Stone.
It is. The Rosetta Stone is famous, but it wasn't unique. This decree from Memphis is another example of those trilingual inscriptions, and these were the keys.
The keys to what?
To deciphering hieroglyphs, scholars like Champollion use these parallel texts, comparing the known Greek with the unknown Egyptian scripts, to finally crack the code.
No way. So a decree from Memphis was instrumental in unlocking thousands of years of Egyptian history.
Absolutely. It wasn't just an artifact of its history. It helped us read its history and the history of the entire civilization. How amazing is that?
That's incredible. So even though the city itself is mostly ruins, these colossal statues, the Sphinx, its legacy is just immense.
It really is. From founding unified Egypt being the center of everything power, religion, trade for so long, to then, slowly fading, its stones carried off.
Its impact goes way beyond the physical site.
Definitely. Its stories in those fragments, but also in our very ability to understand ancient Egypt because of things like that decree.
It really makes you think, how can a place so central, so fundamental to a civilization's identity and power just physically crumble away like that, become a quarry?
Mm. And yet parts of it survive in unexpected ways. Repurposed stones in Cairo, artifacts scattered in museums, and these inscriptions that turned out to be the keys. They don't just tell Memphis' story, they helped unlock the whole civilization. Makes you wonder what other secrets are hiding in the ruins of other lost cities.
A fascinating thought to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of ancient Memphis.